I'm Steve Wilkerson, and I'm with Jim Saunders, Executive Editor of the News Service of Florida. Jim, it's over.
And I think everybody is happy.
I think everybody is happy.
That it's over.
That it's over. But people are already positioning themselves for future elections. But let's talk about the 2014 election in Florida. We'll focus a lot on the governor's race, but we'll talk about others as well. Throughout the election, the refrain was that turnout was going to be the key. And in the polls in the governor's election, time after time, it was within the margin of error, tied, and each side would say, you know, we're going to get our vote to the polls. And the Democrats said, you know, based on our previous elections, we have the best turnout. Well, what happened?
The Democrats thought they could replicate what happened with Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, and that they had this very sophisticated turnout machine that would bring out their supporters. Particularly, they were targeting black voters, Hispanic voters, young single women. Those groups that they viewed as, you know, being able to come out in force and help elect Charlie Crist. But in the end, it doesn't look like it really happened. I mean, they turnout in Southeast Florida in Broward County was about 44%, Dade County is about 40%. It's not very good. I mean, it's below the statewide turnout average. Also, if you look at Central Florida, Orange County was 43%. I think Osceola was like 41%. Osceola is while it's a small county, it's interesting to look at because it has a very large Hispanic population, and it just doesn't look like they got the numbers to turn out that they were projecting.
In some of those areas, Crist got good numbers, but in the overall turnout, he didn't get good numbers. And so in areas where he absolutely needed a good turnout and good numbers in terms of the overall performance of the area, he didn't get it.
Well, he won Southeast Florida. I mean, that's the Democratic stronghold. That's where they always go to vote for votes. He won it, but he just didn't get his, you know, if he'd had 50% turnover in those turnout in those counties, it might have been a different, you know, different calculation we'd be talking about here today. But it doesn't look like the vaunted machine got him out in the numbers that they needed.
And some other factors that people have talked about as being critical in the election. What about Jacksonville? Jacksonville area, huge turnout for Scott.
One of the interesting things in looking at these results is the geographic breakdown. Republicans for 2 decades have, you know, pretty much controlled North Florida across from Jacksonville to Pensacola and down to about Ocala. In statewide and national elections. I mean, it has been a stronghold for them with a couple exceptions like Tallahassee and Gainesville. But it's really striking the margins that Scott ran up in Duval County, but he also ran them up across North Florida. Always the Republican strategy is, we know that the Democrats are going to win Southeast Florida, but we're going to run up big numbers in North Florida to overcome that. And I think we saw a lot of that on Tuesday night, is that the Republicans dominated. Charlie Crist barely campaigned north of Orlando. I mean, we just didn't see him up here much. And when he did campaign in North Florida, it was very targeted. It was focused on black voters in Jacksonville, the Tallahassee area. He also campaigned a little bit in Gainesville, where there's a university. But you know, just broadly, he did not campaign in North Florida, and you know,
kind of wrote it off.
He kind of wrote it off. So you know, it makes you wonder. He wasn't going to win North Florida. I think no one thinks that. But could the margins have been a little bit less in North Florida? Maybe so. You know, also the I-4 corridor is an interesting, as we talked about, the turnout in the Orlando area was low. And it, you know, while he won in Orange County, it doesn't look like the margins that they needed.
Right. Well, let me ask you another question that we heard so much about negative campaigning during this election. And let's go to again to the Charlie Crist side of the ledger, did he give anybody really something to vote for? You know, I'm Charlie Crist and I'm for this, in his ads or in much of his campaign?
Well, to digress for a second, going back to the Obama campaign, you know, one of the things that turnout was great for Obama, and they were able to motivate these groups, but Obama also had a message, hope and change. And that, you know, gave a lot of groups, you know, especially in Obama's first campaign, they loved it, they ate it up. We didn't hear anything like that from Charlie Crist. It was a different candidate trying to appeal to those same groups. There were specific issues he talked about that were probably appealing to some of those groups. Expanding Medicaid, raising the minimum wage. But in terms of an overall positive vision of what he would do as governor, I'm not sure he ever laid that out for voters.
Which was unexpected, because Charlie Crist has always campaigned, in his history as having run twice before statewide, with positive messages, and this was largely a negative campaign on his part.
I think if you look back at the debates and also at the ads, and also the advertisements and the mailers from his supporters a lot of it was anti-Rick Scott. The reason to vote for Charlie Crist was because he's not Rick Scott. That was sort of the message that came through it all. The Scott campaign, you know, had virtually unlimited amounts of money. I mean, they threw money at this race that, like we've never seen. And in the last few weeks, Rick Scott and his wife wrote checks for $12.8 million to run ads. And a lot of it was negative about Charlie Crist. But, and the effect of that was it drove down sort of the sunny view that people had of Crist. He got down, then he was down in the mud with Scott the rest of the campaign, and I don't think it really worked in terms of, again, providing any sort of reason for people to vote for Charlie Crist.
All right, let's shift to the state legislature, because there were some significant changes there. The Republicans won a net of 6 seats in the House, which makes the House now veto-proof. Very important there. Several of those seats came out of the Orlando area. Were there some surprises for you in covering that?
There were 4 races in the state house races in the Orlando area, one of which I think most people thought the Republicans were going to win. That was, it's in Seminole County, District 29. Scott Plakin, a former representative, was running against the Democratic incumbent Mike Clellan. That's a very Republican area, so I don't think anybody was really surprised that Plakin won that race. But there were 3 others there that the Democrats had freshman Democrats running, and a couple of them I was surprised they lost. But Karen Castor Dental lost in a District 30, I believe it is. And she had raised like $400,000, which for a Democratic House candidate is a lot, and especially in a really compact kind of area. She lost to Bob Cortez in that district. Another surprising one to me was Joe Saunders, who another freshman Democrat lost in Orlando district. I didn't see that one coming. And then in another one, another freshman Democrat, Linda Stewart, lost down there. So there was 4 seats right there that flipped to the Republicans. The Republicans also picked up 2 seats in the Tampa Bay area. Sean Harrison, a former representative, came back and kind of got revenge on Mark Danish. He was a Democrat who beat him last time. And then there was another race, Carl Zimmerman, who was a Democrat incumbent. He lost to Chris Sproul. So, that's where all the action was in that I-4 corridor in Central Florida.